The core conviction of our movement is that we are a nation that put and will put its own citizens first.
President Trump at CPAC on Friday. We're joined on a roundtable now by Matt Schlapp, excuse me, Matt,
okay.
The chair of the American Conservative Union. Of course, they run CPAC. Democratic strategist Stephanie Cutter. The editor of The New Yorker, David Remnick. We're going to talk about your cover story on Russia in just a minute. And also Amy Holmes, political analyst for Rasmussen Reports. And former Clinton Labor Secretary, UC Berkeley professor Robert Reich. He's the author of Saving Capitalism, now out in paperback. And David, let me begin with Russia. You have a major cover story this week called Active Measures.
Yeah.
Looks at how the Russian interference in our campaign fits into what they've been doing for many years, how it fits into what they want to do in Europe as well, what Putin is trying to do across the West. And one of the things I was struck by is a pretty stark divide between how the Democrats you've interviewed on the Intelligence Committee speak about this investigation and how the Republicans speak about it.
Well, this is a piece that I collaborated with Evan Osnos in Washington and Josh Yaffa in Moscow. And let's remember, there's a big history of active measures on both sides. Americans have interfered in regimes and regime change, and all during the Cold War interfered in elections as well. This has been back and forth. This is nothing absolutely new, but the extent of this potentially is extraordinary. We have 17 intelligence agencies all asserting that there was serious interference in our presidential election.
Administration, you just heard it again right there, sort of doubling and tripling down on the idea that there were no inappropriate contacts.
Here's the problem. The problem is that intelligence agencies are not giving us the evidence of this. And here they have a point. And they say, the intelligence agencies have difficulty of giving evidence is you either give away your human sources or you give away your technological means of this. And people do have memories on the left and the right of the Iraq War when the intelligence agencies went very, very bad and did a great disservice to the country in cooperating with the Bush administration. What we need is a real investigation. And I think people on both sides of the aisle, by the way, Republicans as well, Senator McCain, Senator Burr, have said very clearly that it's necessary to investigate this in a serious way. Otherwise, we go through this cloud of this kind of dissonance of an election that has been spoiled. It might not be the decisive factor, the only factor by any means, but it's something deeply important.
You are seeing divides now on the Republican side on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, but let's go back to the fundamental issues. Congress's job is to do oversight, and they should do it aggressively. When it comes to our national security, the intelligence committees are the right place to start. So they should be aggressive, and they should go where the facts take them. As far as the Department of Justice, it is a little ironic when you have Jeff Sessions waiting for his next 3 top appointments to get picked, and literally the news coverage is, well, he couldn't even recuse himself to his deputy because that person's a political. That person isn't a political, they're a career. So if we look at all of this, it's ironic that we have...
He's saying he's not going to recuse.
But hold on. Why would we staff a special counsel when we haven't even staffed the counsel's office? Let's start staffing DOJ, and then we can decide about special counsels.
What's the answer to that?
Well, it just seems to me from listening to the White House speak earlier is that they're just trying to kick the can down the road. They're like, let's let this process run out. Fine, let's let it run out. We know where it's going to end. They've already tainted the process by trying to get, the chair of the Select Intelligence Committee to speak to members of the media on their behalf. They've reached out to intelligence and law enforcement officials to try to get them to speak out on their behalf. They're trying to influence the process. Therefore, it needs to be an independent process. We've been down this road before. We know how it ends. The only way to do this right is to have an independent process.
Any chance the White House breaks on this?
Not as of yet. I don't anticipate that. But I think it's also important to clarify that Loretta Lynch actually did not recuse herself in the email investigations for Hillary Clinton. She reserved for herself the right to overrule James Comey if she had a disagreement with him. So I think we need to clarify that there. Also, Senator Marco Rubio, I think it was just last week, he put out a tweet, as we now communicate over Twitter, saying that he's very confident that there can be a thorough, robust, bipartisan investigation on the Senate Intelligence Committee. Again, Senator McCain, chairman of the Armed Services Committee, he said that he might want to look at it too. We know that staffers are already being or discussing their access to classified information, so they can look. And I would disagree with you, Stephanie. We don't know where this is going to end. That's why we need to investigate.
Well, we don't know. We don't know where it's going to end, but I think that there is absolutely nothing more important to the integrity of our democracy than public trust that, in fact, our voting system was not tampered with, particularly
So no
by
danger for the
foreign power.
Democrats in pushing this too far?
I think that there is not a danger right now, George, particularly when you're seeing cracks in the Republican Party. When Darrell Issa says, yes, we do need a special prosecutor. When John McCain begins to say, look, we have to get to the bottom of this. If the public does not trust that the Republicans essentially, by overseeing this process, will oversee it correctly, then we have no choice.
But
One of the issues
but
Republicans and Democrats.
But I don't get this whole thing. The Department of Justice oversaw one of the most politically sensitive issues with the Clinton Foundation. And there was no special counsel. And the voters got to decide whether it was handled well or not. This is for the Congress to handle through the Intelligence Committee. This is our national security. We have a brand new administration. There's one person over at the Department of Justice. Let's get a few more people populated. That's before the Senate right now. That needs to happen. If there's anything that's done appropriately, then you go to the next step. We start first with what's...
Hold on a second. Wait a second. You keep saying the FBI investigation exists right now.
That's right. And it should.
An actual investigation.
And it should.
So the question is, should the Attorney General be overseeing that? But I do want to move on to a separate part of this, Dave, and I want to bring this question to you. One of the other mysteries here that it's been difficult for anyone to get to the bottom of is explaining, even with whatever context there may have been, what is behind President Trump's sort of courtship of Vladimir Putin.
Well, I think we're going to have to find out through further investigation. I mean, there's great concern among, and you see it in the journalism around it, that there's a number of things, that there are financial interests that have to be looked into. There's the question of contacts between people in the campaign and Russians, which could lead to some sense of collusion. Again, this is not conclusive yet. And then at the same time, you have the White House trying to block inquiries. Trying to get people from the FBI to tamp down stories that are happening in the press. This is all very serious. And the bigger question, you have, on the one hand, you have the question of the integrity of our democracy, which couldn't be a question. And at the same time, you have our conflict with Russia, which is very, very serious. And what are the motivations of Vladimir Putin to interfere in the first place? Are because he wants to weaken Western institutions from NATO to the European Union. So what's at stake here could not be larger, and so the stakes for independent inquiry into this, whether it's journalistic or it's law enforcement or congressional, is absolutely essential that they be.
And George, this is where...
But could I jump in? In your recitation just now, I think you point to one of the problems and the challenges of this investigation is we don't know what the target is. We don't know if it's Russia, and if it is Russia, you know, the target, you can't prosecute Russia, so it wouldn't be appropriate to have a special prosecutor in that instance. That's why there needs to be this investigation moving forward so you can zero in on just exactly what it is we're talking about.
And what about this weakening? I mean, if you really look at it, does anybody think Donald Trump's going to be some kind of pushover for anyone? You know, I think it's inevitable that he's going to get at odds with Vladimir Putin. And the other choice was Hillary Clinton.
Have you heard a statement?
The other person was Vladimir Putin. Was Hillary Clinton, who had that gimmicky red reset button and was trying to be friendly.
This is why John McCain is so very important here, because if we have hardliners and military experts in the Senate who are going to say, no, we have to have an investigation and we have got to get to the bottom of this. This gives credibility. As long as this is a partisan issue, it's going nowhere. But when Republicans, particularly John McCain, start saying we've got to get to the bottom of this, it becomes a completely different issue.
Okay, we got to take a quick break. We'll be right back with the new elected DNC chair, Tom Perez. Also, after his election yesterday, he joins us live this morning. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Chairman.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
You got a congratulations from the president yesterday, right after your win. He says, congratulations to Perez, who has just been named chairman of the DNC. I could not be happier for him or for the Republican Party. Your response?
Well, you know, Congressman Ellison and I are united, and our Democratic unity is Donald Trump's worst nightmare. And we not only had a good day here in Atlanta yesterday, George, but we had a good day in Delaware. Because the real challenge is, can we channel this energy that we see across America into positive action? And in Delaware yesterday, there was a race for a state Senate seat where the balance of the Senate was at stake. We came in there, we had a great candidate, the DNC supported, our revolution supported, grassroots activists supported. She kicked butt, and we took that Senate seat. That's what we have to do as Democrats, is help elect people in state houses, the presidency, local government, everywhere in between.
That is a start, but I think you'd agree it's just a start. And yesterday you had Bernie Sanders. You know, there was some discord at the meeting, and then actually some boos after you won. And Bernie Sanders came out with a warning. Of course, he backed Keith Ellison and said it's imperative that, Tom, you understand that the same old is not working, and that we must open the doors of the party to working people and young people in a way that has never been done before. How are you going to do that?
Well, it starts with the partnership that Congressman Ellison and I have. We have been friends for a long time. We are united, and our values are identical. We want to make sure that everyone has a fair shake. We want to make sure that that woman I met in Detroit, part of the Fight for 15 movement, she slept in her car the night before I met her with her 3 children. We can do better. We want to make sure that people struggling to save for retirement have a fair shake. We want to make sure that when you work overtime, you get paid overtime. These are things that Donald Trump is fighting against, and these are things that we're all fighting for as Democrats. When we lead with our values, we win, and that's what we're going to do.
Up against a brutal map, both in state houses and in the congressional midterms coming up in 2018. I want to put up a map from the 2016 election right now showing by county, the election results by county, that sea of red all across the country. How do you begin to turn that tide of red around when it's so predominant around so much of the country?
We begin by building strong parties in the 50 states and the territories. We didn't invest enough in our state party infrastructure. We didn't invest enough in grassroots organizing. We ignored rural swaths of America. We can't do that. We need an every zip code strategy. We need to redefine the role of the DNC so that we're helping to elect people from the school board to the Senate. And the best way to do that is to build that strong infrastructure and to strengthen our partnerships with people in the labor movement, with Planned Parenthood, with others who are involved in that grassroots organizing infrastructure. When we lead with our values, when we're in every zip code, we succeed. I'm very optimistic that we can do this because I think we have the right values. I think we have the right message. We saw it yesterday in Delaware. We're going to see it down here in Atlanta in a congressional election that's coming up here in Cobb County and surrounding Atlanta. And that's what we have to do everywhere. A lot of work, but I'm optimistic.
Hillary Clinton put out a video just before the final vote calling for unity. Let's listen.
The challenges we face as a party and a country are real. So now more than ever, we need to stay engaged. Let resistance plus persistence equal progress for our party and our country.
So Hillary Clinton is staying engaged. Are you open to see her run again in 2020?
Well, everyone who wants to run should run, and I'm confident we're going to have a robust field of candidates. What I am also confident about is as we invest in our state party infrastructures, we are going to build strong capacity to elect Democrats up and down the ticket. There is such an electricity out there across America, and it's not just the traditional activists, George. It's people who come up to me and say, Tom, I was a casual participant in democracy, and I understand that democracy can't be a spectator sport. And Congressman Ellison has been spectacular in tapping into that grassroots advocacy, and we're working together to make sure we translate this activism into results. Because when we lead with our values, I think we succeed.
Chairman Perez, thanks for joining us this morning.
Pleasure to be with you.
Let's bring this back now to the roundtable. Bob Reich, I want to begin with you. There is a lot of energy out there in what they are calling the resistance. The key question is, can it be turned into an enduring and effective movement?
That is the key question, and right now there is a disconnect, George, between a rather sclerotic Democratic apparatus, which is in complete disarray. I mean, the Democratic Party has not been in this bad shape since perhaps the 1920s, and a huge uprising at the grassroots, mostly against Trump. Now, how can Tom Perez, can he actually utilize that, turn the Democratic Party from a vast fundraising machine into a movement? Hasn't been done before very easily. I mean, you remember in the Vietnam War days, we had a huge uprising, but obviously the Democratic Party had nothing to do with that. The thing that worries me most of all is that if you look at the problems inside the Democratic Party, they have a lot to do with the same sort of populist uprising we're seeing across the country, including the Donald Trump campaign. That is, people for 35 years have not had a raise. The average American is actually economically in a lot of economic desperation, insecure. We have parts of this country that are really desolate in terms of the economic activity. And so you've got a lot of anger out there that nobody, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans, have come up with a way.
The question is, Stephanie, can that anger be channeled into something that actually delivers for these people, or is it enough right now for Democrats and the opposition simply to try to take down Trump?
Well, I think you can never be wholly successful when you're just against something. You also have to be for something. And I think what you heard, I'm not sure whether to call him Secretary Perez or Chairman Perez. Tom,
it's fine.
Was saying is that we're on the right side of these issues. We've got the right values to make this argument. So I think what you're going to see him do is not just help build the party infrastructure from the bottom up and provide the right tools to be able to do that all over the country, not just on the coast, not just in blue states, not just in battleground states, but also Democrats stick to their values and argue for their values, not just to prevent Trump from doing bad things, you know, what he's doing with the deportation force, what he did with the Muslim ban. Of course, Democrats are going to speak up about that. But then what are Democrats for? Raising the minimum wage, increasing manufacturing bases, providing more opportunities for education. These are all things that we can do to start building a stronger economy, especially for the people who haven't gotten a raise.
David Remnick, the immediate question they're going to face are there any issues where they can cooperate with Donald Trump, or is the price too high, the price that the activists are going to impose too high on the elected officials?
Well, yes, I think there are issues that people can cooperate on. The infrastructure one is the classic one that people say they can cooperate on. It would create jobs. It would,
as long as there are no details out there.
As long as there are no details.
How you pay for it.
The question is, to what degree are people that consider themselves Trump's voters going to be disappointed by the Trump presidency, and how quickly? And how quickly? In other words, all this ideological talk of economic nationalism, which we've heard Steve
Bannon, at CPAC too, yeah.
And CPAC put a name to.
I didn't hear a lot of disappointment in that room, just so you know.
That room was that room. The question is the country. And, you know, there are systemic, painful problems of globalization and deindustrialization that cannot be solved with a phone call or a tweet or an angry speech or trying to isolate the press and the First Amendment. Sooner or later, the Donald Trump show... Excuse me. Let me finish. Sooner or later, the Donald Trump show, which is a projection of strength and authority, will have to deliver to his voters. And if he doesn't, in very real terms, if he can't supersede a situation where President cut the unemployment rate in half, if he can't do better, if he can't open factories and all the rest that he's promised, then I think he's in trouble.
I want to agree. Okay, so we're talking about Democrats and Republicans working together. I agree with the Secretary. I actually think if the Republican Party was looking for its most pristine conservative voice, they probably would have picked somebody other than Donald Trump. It's the idea that he's willing to take on things and fight, and he's willing to really address these basic economic issues. That's what he has to deliver on.
20 seconds. But what are the concrete things that he has to deliver to keep that
Let me be specific about this, which is I think at the end of the day, it is making those Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Ohio, working class people see a real difference in their life. We'll be able to track it through their take-home pay and greater economic opportunity. If that doesn't happen, I agree. We're in trouble.
But look, that is unfortunately going to have to be the last word. We don't have any time. It is the debate.
Economic nationalism versus investing in people, in their education, training.